The 2023 NFL Draft Combine kicks off in Indianapolis on February 26th. Here is your guide to getting the most out of this major NFL draft event through the lens of fantasy football. There's 4 reasons to watch the NFL Draft Combine. I'm going to break down each of the 4 categories and give you examples of players that I'm watching within each of those categories. Let's start here with the most important part of the combine. And it's not the part that gets hyped up as much as other aspects of it. And it's a little bit frustrating because we may not actually know the results of this aspect of the combine until draft night. And we're probably only going to know about the results if they find something negative. I'm talking about the medicals. The medicals are actually the reason the NFL Draft Combine exists. They wanted an opportunity to centralize getting these players all in the same space so NFL teams could get their medical personnel to examine, check out these players, the ones who have a past injury history, and sometimes there's surprise injuries that we find out about as well through the medical testing period. There are a few players that I'm going to be watching closely, keeping my ear to the ground. I'm very interested in their injury history, and hopefully we get some positive reports coming out of Indianapolis. Starting here with quarterback Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker suffered a late season knee injury for Tennessee, and it seemed to me like he wasn't going to be ready to start the 2023 NFL season. But recent reports have been coming out that his rehab is on track, that he could actually get into preseason action, which would really boost him up, I think, in terms of draft capital. So if he goes to the draft combine and gets cleared in terms of being on pace here, that's going to be a really huge thing. Next up is running back CJ Stroud. This is somebody I know medical staffs are going to be very interested in. He has a history of at least one confirmed knee injury, possibly a second confirmed injury to that same knee. I believe it's his right knee. And so for CJ Stroud here, the medicals are going to be really critical. It's important to point out here that folks usually have a misconception around medical testing. They think, okay, say a team looks at CJ Stroud and has concerns about his knee. A lot of times folks think, oh, maybe they'll drop him down a couple rounds on their board. That's usually not the case. If a team red flags a prospect, they're going to be taken off the board, right? And so if CJ Stroud ends up getting taken off the board of 12 different teams, that could really jeopardize his draft capital. Mo Ibrahim is another running back. Ibrahim had an Achilles injury back in 2021. He ruptured his Achilles in the first game of the season, and folks thought that was kind of it for Mo. He came back in 2022, and it didn't look like he lost any of his explosiveness. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he checks out medically. Wide receiver Michael Wilson out of Stanford is somebody that folks have been really into athletically. He showed up at the Senior Bowl, impressed a lot of folks. Wilson, though, has struggled to ever finish a full season of collegiate football. It's been multiple injuries here. So it's going to be really interesting to see if Michael Wilson is able to clear that medical side of things. And then tight end Luke Musgrave, who's getting a lot of hype as a super athletic guy. And we'll circle back when we talk about him a little bit later here and talk about his athletic profile. But his knee stopped him, ended his 2022 season early, but it was an early season knee injury. So the rumor is here that Luke Musgrave is 100% and should be good to go. And I certainly hope that's it, because Luke Musgrave absolutely has a high upside profile, and I don't want to see Luke Musgrave or any of these players fail the medicals. But it is important to start by talking about medical testing, even though it's not the flashiest, because it is the most important thing that happens at the combine every single year. Next up is the interviews. NFL teams have the opportunity to sit down and really examine these guys in a one-to-one capacity, or more oftentimes it's about 10 executives from an NFL team or coaching staff to that one prospect. Now, position to position, it's going to be a little bit different. The questions they're asked and what they're going to actually talk about between the NFL teams and the prospect. The thing that I'm really going to be looking for is usually 2 things, right? I want to hear how the quarterbacks have done in their interviews, and I want to hear about players that we might be concerned about for character-related issues. So starting here with the quarterbacks, I can't wait to hear how players are going to come off the whiteboard. You know, the expectation coming in is that Will Levis is going to look great on the whiteboard. And when I say great on the whiteboard, right, an NFL team may ask him to draw up a play or try to remember a bad play even, or correct a mistake on his film from college, right? Have him draw up an audible, just do different exercises here to see how quickly he can think on his feet and how well he understands the game of football, right? The expectation coming in is that Will Levis is going to do pretty well in these interviews, and I think he needs to do well to get the type of top 5, top 10 draft capital that he's being hyped up to have. I'm excited about a guy like Anthony Richardson because I think Anthony Richardson is a better game manager and understands understands a passing offense more than he's given credit for. He definitely still has to develop a lot in that area, but I think he's going to do well on the whiteboard, and I'm certainly excited for that. And this is also an opportunity for those tier 2 guys to help bump themselves up. Going back to Hendon Hooker, somebody who may not even do the full medical examination, being able to go show up in the interviews and impress in that way could really help him get round 2 draft capital, which is, I think, the absolute ceiling for Hendon Hooker, but definitely a ceiling that he could reach. The other example here is guys who NFL teams might just have questions about, right? Their collegiate experience, on the field issues, off the field issues, different things. And so a really good example of this is Kayshon Boutte, right? Kayshon Boutte looked fantastic coming out in his first year for LSU, was really productive, and then struggled this past year, really kind of was non-existent in the offense, decides to return to LSU, then decides to declare for the draft afterwards. There was some news that came out that maybe involved him, maybe didn't involve him, right? And so now this is an opportunity for those NFL coaches to get in front of him, talk to him about these issues. And it's going to be an opportunity for Boutte to make an argument for himself, because we know Kayshon Boutte has great athletic upside here, but it's going to be a question of when does an NFL team feel comfortable investing that draft capital, which of course we care about a ton from a fantasy football lens. All right, here's the juicy stuff. This is what we love from a fantasy football side of things. Let's talk about the measurements. Now, we do have some measurements on players who were at the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Bowl, and so that was great. We got some good measurements, some minor surprises, but nothing too wild, right? But remember, folks got really excited when Tajay Spears weighed in the high 190s, right? So those are the types of things that we're going to be looking for here. I have about 7 players that I'm most interested in. Bryce Young, obviously, that's who we're looking for. That's who we're most interested in terms of the quarterback position. Now, that being said, I don't care that much. I'm obviously going to be interested. The bet here is kind of over under 5'10", 5'10 and a quarter. That's what we're talking about, Bryce Young. The weight, I'm a little bit more interested in, but he can bulk up just for the combine. I wouldn't be surprised if he bulks up for the combine, tries to come in the 190s, and then doesn't end up running or doing anything like that. That's the thing you have to keep in mind too with all these different prospects, is they may or may not participate in different drills depending on whether or not they want to save it for their pro day. And one of the reasons they may save it for their pro day is because they might be bulking up to try to measure in well. And that could happen with Bryce Young. But folks, here's the bottom line. I don't care if he's 189 or 197. We know he's undersized. That's already factored into the evaluation. How about the running back position here? Jahmyr Gibbs. It's really interesting to me, and I understand it, but if Bijan Robinson wasn't in this class, we would be talking so much more about Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, the number I want to see here is, can Jahmyr Gibbs come in above 195? He was listed above 195 at Alabama, but depending on, what game you're seeing him, that might look a little bit questionable. Now, 195 is an analytical benchmark here. Statistically speaking, over the course of recent history, when a running back is at 195, that's the magical weight. And I'm not going to pretend to be an analytics expert here, but I know that's a big benchmark a lot of folks care about. Devin Achane. Now, here's a really interesting one for me. If you look at Devin Achane, the running back at a Texas A&M, this is somebody we're expecting to run in the 4.3s, possibly even 4.2s. Achane is fast. And if you look on his SEC tape, playing against some of the best defenses in the country, he actually can run fairly well in between the tackles. And he holds up well for a player that's listed in the 180s. I do expect him to measure in the 180s, but this is a great example of somebody who could skyrocket. If Devin Achane weighs in at 195, again, if he can just get near that benchmark, he'll have a huge rise in fantasy football value. And I'm not necessarily predicting that, but I'm just trying to give an example of the type of player that I'm watching here. You have a skill set that's exciting. He's going to be fast. If he can just weigh in enough, there's going to be a huge push in his ADP. He'll probably end up a first round rookie pick if he does hit 195. I feel very confident saying that. And then let's look at the other side of this here. Kendre Miller, the running back at a TCU. I've noticed here I'm picking up a little bit of a reputation of being a Kendre Miller hater, so I'm going to be a little careful with the way I phrase this. But when I watch Kendre Miller, he's listed at 6'0", 220. When I watch him play against Big 12 defenders, he's not able to break through the goal line. He's not able to consistently, push over Big 12 linebackers. So I start to question that 220 number. And size is a big part of what people like about Kendre Miller. So it wouldn't shock me if Kendre Miller comes in closer to 210. And at that point, do folks start to reevaluate and say, well, he didn't look strong on tape, and now he's weighing in smaller than he was listed. Another guy that's just going to be fun to watch, Deuce Vaughn, the running back at Kansas State. He's listed at 5'6", 172. Man, if Kansas State is inflating 5'6", 172, that's just going to be wild. I think we all know Deuce Vaughn is small. Nobody expects him to be a 250 touch guy per season in the NFL, but he's certainly going to be somebody who's really fun. I think he's a high day 3 selection, like just over the turn of round 4 right now. So it'll be just kind of fun to see, what Deuce weighs in at here. All right, the top 3 wide receivers in my rankings here, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jordan Addison, Jalen Hyatt, they're all listed at 6 foot. It'll be interesting to see if they all actually hit that 6 foot number. If anybody, I think I'm most concerned about Addison hitting that number. Maybe he's 5'10 and a half. Maybe he's 5'11. It's not a huge difference here, but the class overall is a little bit small. So it'd be nice to see these guys clear that 6'0 benchmark. What I'm more interested in here is take Addison and Hyatt into focus. Both of them are listed at 175. I need both of those guys to measure in at 175 here. They both have more slender frames, and I both like them a lot. If they could be closer to 180 than they are 170, that would definitely make me feel better, especially for a guy like Jalen Hyatt, who has to run fast at the combine. So if he can come in closer to 180 and run the time that we expect him to, that's going to be a smash play. And then how about just one tight end to round things out here? Darnell Washington's just going to be fun here. He's listed at 6'7", 265. He's very much a tight end. You could stick him at right tackle if you wanted to, but why would you waste his pass catching ability? Nonetheless here, I can't wait to see if 6'7", 265 is his official measurement, because I got to tell you, he looks all of that measurement. You might be a little surprised to see I saved athletic testing for the end, but I did it intentionally, because I think that's the thing folks pay the most attention to. But really, in my opinion, it's the last piece of the puzzle. And I do care about athletic testing. Do not get me wrong. But I look at athletic testing in the context of their film, and I will make adjustments to my film grades on players, and certain traits are able to be more highlighted by the NFL Combine, speed being a great example of that. Now, it's not a one-to-one, right? Because I don't just care about the 40 time. I factor in quickness, I factor in play speed versus running in a straight line, but still, that's going to be the number you see me tweeting out about, you see everybody tweeting out about. It's all about the 40-yard dash, but there are other opportunities here to pay attention to athletic testing. One guy that I'm really excited to see is Sean Tucker, because I got to tell you, I did my initial film review on Sean Tucker watching his 2021 film, and I wasn't super impressed with this speed everybody was talking about. You go back to high school, you see he is a high-level track athlete, right? And I didn't see it on his tape necessarily. Now, when I watched 2022 tape, I did see more examples of Sean Tucker's speed. I think a big piece of that is the offense he was playing within. That offensive line was not the best offensive line to run behind, and I don't think they really gave him time to speed up. So here is Sean Tucker's opportunity to pull himself out of his college scheme and to run in a straight line. We want to see low 4.4s here. If we even hit low to mid 4.4s, I think Sean Tucker's going to wrap himself up as a top 50, top 75 draft target here. It's going to be a pretty pivotal guy to watch. If he matches that speed with size, it's definitely going to make its rounds here through Twitter and the fantasy football community. I'm very happy that Zach Charbonnet has been gaining a ton of hype over the last couple weeks, even months at this point in time. I've liked Zach Charbonnet going all the way back to 2020 in his freshman season for Michigan. He transfers to UCLA, and I've really liked his tape. It's really funny. Everybody who I talked to who has gone in and watched Charbonnet's tape says to me, I thought going in he was just going to be a physical guy. I was surprised by his athleticism. And that's one thing I've been harping on for a while. Although Zach Charbonnet has a physical approach and a physical build, he does well athletically. And you have to understand the UCLA scheme as well for Chip Kelly. It's made for athletic running backs. So Charbonnet on paper doesn't look like a good fit, but you look at it from the other side and say, wow, he was able to execute as a back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher in an offense that demands athleticism from the running back position. So I think Sharp could go here. And if he does the 3-cone, if he does the jumps, the broad and the vertical jumps, I think he could post in some nice percentiles here. And Sharp could end up being a nice, I want to say riser, not for me. I have him high, but a consensus riser here. And I think with some good athletic testing and a solid 40 time, we don't need anything wild for Charbonnet's 40 time, right? If we just pair those things together, I think he's going to be sniffing top 50 NFL draft capital. So I'd be definitely excited to see that. So I mentioned Devin Achane earlier here, and I'm not going to get too much into his time. We know he's going to be fast, right? It's probably in the 4.2s, maybe it's in the 4.3s, but I want to stop at Devin Achane to make a point here. This is a huge, huge mistake people make from the NFL Draft Combine. Do not double count. Don't double count positives. Don't double count negatives, right? We know Devin Achane is fast. If you haven't maxed out your speed score on Devin Achane already, then you haven't watched him play football, right? Devin Achane is not going to get bumped up at all in my rankings based on the 40 time he runs. I've already maxed out his speed trait, right? So yes, we should get excited. We should post on Twitter. We should get hype, but don't actually bump him up your rankings. We already know he's going to run fast, right? The same thing for guys who aren't going to run fast. We already understand that's the way things work, right? We're not going in here and expecting a running back that's coming in weighing 220, 235 to run in the 4.3s. So don't knock that guy on that. There's different ways to win in the NFL. You don't have to just be one way. All right, 4 wide receivers to finish us up here that I'm definitely interested in watching through the combine weekend. Quentin Johnston, in my opinion, for my rankings, he needs to have a big weekend at the combine. He's being hyped up as this athletic big man, so he needs to come in and he needs to look athletic, right? So I need to see a good vertical from him, good vertical jump. We want to see a solid 40 time here. Low 4.5s, I think, is what we're expecting. If he sneaks into the 4.4s, that's great for him. But given his frame and body size, low 4.5s would be great. And I think he's going to need to do that in order to hold that round 1 draft capital that folks have been assigning to him. How about Kayshon Boutte? I talked about his interviews earlier, but this is somebody who was billed as an athlete coming out, and he looked very athletic in his first year at LSU. But that athleticism almost looks to drop off as his tape goes on, right? So is that effort, or did he lose some of that athleticism? So I think he's somebody who needs to lean into the drills and really show up and show out. Tank Dell is going to be a really fun guy to watch. I'm excited to see Tank Dell's 40 time because he is going to weigh in probably in the 160s. It is important that Tank Dell validates his speed. I have a good speed time, or speed score, I should say, on Tank Dell. What I'm going to be looking for here is a great speed score in order to help justify this top 100 draft capital that I've been seeing him hype. Right now, for me, he's still an early day 3 prospect, somebody who's going to start by contributing mostly on special teams and definitely rotate in as a wide receiver. But if he comes in and runs in the 4.3s, it's really going to help, I think, justify that top 100 draft capital for Tank Dell. And another speedy wideout here who's not getting a ton of hype. And, part of this is he didn't have the best Senior Bowl, but Darius Davis at a TCU is somebody whose tape I did enjoy, and I do expect him to be one of the 3 to 5 fastest wide receivers. So we may see Darius Davis here build up a little bit of momentum over the course of the NFL Draft Combine weekend. Definitely make sure to drop a comment in the video. Let me know how you feel about these players, how you think that they're going to perform. And if you want to check out more of my work, my rookie rankings, you can head on over to patreon.com/rookiebigboard, and you can get access to my rankings, my NFL draft guide, all the good stuff there. So go ahead and check that out. And I appreciate you checking out this video.